Order and we'll explain what's going on.
Okay, great. So here I am without camera, Rohit. I'd like to call the Marvin Heritage District Strategic Plan Committee on May 6th, 6:33. Do determine that there is a quorum. Melinda is there, and there's Will, Dorota, Jake, and John. That's 5. And so first of all, I would need someone to perhaps just so move the motion that Austin is going to make to call for a recess and reconvene at Banks Church. Austin will make the motion, but basically he had some sort of mechanical, electrical issue, and we can't have the meeting here. Mm-hmm. So go ahead.
Basically, we had to evacuate the building earlier today because of a strange smell that could have turned into an electrical fire. So we're at Banks, so next door. So
it was lots of excitement with all the fire trucks, wasn't it?
Yeah, Will was with us, so he got to experience that firsthand. Luckily, we're getting a new village hall, and hopefully we don't have to be terrified for our lives again. So we're going to need a motion to recess the meeting to Banks Presbyterian Church Fellowship Hall at 10,012 Newtown Road. So I just need a so move.
A motion.
There you go.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, great. I heard 2 ayes and saw 3 hands.
Motion passes.
Right. See you in a bit.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was using it. Okay, so we are live again, and
So we have to make a motion
they don't
to
have
reconvene?
they don't have to make a motion to reconvene. We can just reconvene.
Awesome. Okay, so we're reconvening here at 6:37, March 6th, at Banks Fellowship Hall. Thank you guys for your patience. Awesome. First thing on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes of March 4th.
Need to adopt it.
Yes.
Adoption of the agenda
First
first.
thing on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to make on the agenda?
Someone is echoing.
I think that's John. I saw you
Okay.
echoing there. So thank you. Okay, so with nobody commenting about changes to the agenda, can I get a motion?
Actually, I have a change.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Sorry, I just thought about this. One quick change I'd like just to add, new business item 3, discussion of, gosh, what am I going to call this? Discussion of post-pandemic meetings.
Okay,
You've heard the spiel before.
I have. All right then.
So, if that's okay with everyone, we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Awesome. All in favor say aye or raise your hand. Awesome. Okay, Dorota?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. The meeting agenda is adopted. Next up is the adoption of the minutes of March 4th, 2021. Sorry, I was skipping around there. Does anyone have any comments about the minutes? Hearing nothing, can I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
Move to adopt.
Okay, Dorota got that. All in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
And Rohit, let me know if you see anybody else join the meeting.
Sure, we'll do. Great. So, public comment period. Is there anyone? No one is here, unless you would like to make a public comment.
He's the liaison. He don't have to do
Okay.
that. He don't have to go through the spiel.
Anyone on the WebEx like to make a public comment? You can unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll go into the new business items, which number 1 is the consider adoption of the revised meeting schedule. Austin.
Okay, so basically, whenever we formed the committee, you guys adopted a meeting schedule that ran through May. Obviously, it's May now, and we need to schedule future meetings. So this runs through the end of the year. Whether or not we need all these meetings is yet to
I
be
doubt
seen.
that we will need all those meetings.
But just in case, this, or unless you really want to recommend something shorter, Rohit.
I mean, I think I see that you put it through December, and I think it's a good idea to have it through December so we don't have to go through this process again in case we need one more meeting.
Okay.
But I really anticipate the timeline of the strategic plan being kind of completed around late summer, early fall.
Okay.
And at that point, the strategic plan committee will have finished their task.
So all these meetings are the same. They're all the first Thursday of the month at 6:30 p.m. normally at Village Hall. Does anybody have a problem with these dates? Do we need to discuss changing the dates to different days?
Okay. Well, hearing nothing, can I get a motion to adopt the meeting schedule as presented?
I move
Motion
to,
is Jake.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Okay, got it? Okay. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
I,
Okay, thank you.
To-do list.
Jake?
Aye.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, so that is complete. Any other discussion?
You're good.
Awesome. Okay, the second item is the big item for today, discussion of Marvin Heritage's district form-based code. So this is obviously one agenda item, but I really do want to kind of structure the discussion in sections. In your packet is the first draft, a progress draft, if you want to call it that, of the form-based code, which is different from conventional zoning because it regulates the development by how it would look like, how it would feel. So the main components of this district's code is, first up is on page 3, the map of the sub-districts. I'm going to start sharing in a second so that we can, so I can basically show people. I see we have a lot of guests, which is great. There is a lot less commotion about this version than the version that was going to be discussed in April, so I'm really happy about that.
Aren't we all?
Yes. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Give me just 1 second. Oh man, I'd really love to be able to rotate this particular page.
Look at that.
That'll do. All right. Okay, great. So right here on page 3 we have the map of sub-districts, and this was designed basically largely off of the land use plan that was adopted in November, but to focus some of the commercial activity in the center and the residential activity in the residential only node. So we have these 5 nodes: the residential only node, the mixed use districts, which would have residential around the back and commercial along the street. There are this commercial only districts, which would have a 100-foot buffer along the back and commercial in the front. And then the civic districts, which are the churches and the Marvin Village owned property. And 2 properties here that would be considered the existing building only sub-district, where the properties are going to be allowed to have some commercial that is less impactful as these other properties, but because they don't really have the room or the distance to have a buffer, they would only be allowed to have the existing buildings and far more limited commercial uses. So those are the 5 subzones, and they're really largely based around the properties that are appropriate for those subzones. So I'd like to, I guess, stop there and see if anyone has any questions on this, because I think if I go too far in any section, comments might build up.
Hey, I know that we have this in our packets, but is there a way to blow this up a tiny bit?
You mean like
You could go up to
Like that?
layout. Okay, that works too.
Good. Yeah, I think when I'm sharing my screen, it should appear taking up most of the screen on the people online. I think she just wanted me to zoom in. So how is that? Like in terms of, like the churches are here, the village hall is here, these commercial, residential in the back and commercial in the front here, and then residential only here in the existing buildings here. So, great. Okay. Well, that's awesome. With no other, whoops, didn't want to jump all the way like that already. So with no other comments, I'll move on from that. So the next couple of sections are, the big reason why this type of zoning district is, quote, better. It's really visual. So it will define the 5 districts by what building types are allowed in those districts. So in the residential only, we have, now I didn't really make this change yet from the planning board. They were thinking of not having this kind of what I'm calling the Marvin vernacular home. But then the small lot homes could be allowed in the center with the Marvin vernacular homes, or a similar lot size but different architecture around the outside, so that people who are living adjacent to this district would ever only see kind of Marvin style, kind of large lot single family homes from their property.
Do you have that picture from earlier?
Yeah, I'll pull that up. I want to go through
more of what you're talking about.
Right. I do have that. I'll go through all the district types and then pull up that one site plan. I think that would be an appropriate time to do it. The mixed use would be the one with commercial in the front and residences in the back. So we have kind of all the building types that would be allowed there. And so I've kind of chosen these dimensions by what Tom would like this. Tom is also on the call. I really should introduce him at some point. Tom Whitenauer is the consultant that we've hired through Enfocus, and he's also put a lot of work into this district and the creation of this zoning district so far. But anyway, so we looked into what we call the DNA of Marvin area houses. Some of the larger neighborhoods, of course, have closer to an acre houses that wouldn't be as appropriate for a downtown district. But even some neighborhoods that are just regular single-family neighborhoods have as low as a third of an acre houses. So I chose somewhere in the middle because I don't want to go right away to choosing the most dense lot type as the large lot type. So here we are right at a half an acre. And then for the cluster houses, I wrote 8,000 here because that's the patio home type of house that we have. I think maybe even 10,000 would be appropriate for a minimum lot size. But all things considered, with the open space requirements, I haven't put this in this packet yet because I'm not done with that section, but thinking 30% open space would be a reasonable amount, and then in exchange have the lots be smaller. And in the end, it's kind of reverse engineered a little bit that I'm not saying there would be 1 lot per acre or anything like that, but the result is roughly that about 1 lot per acre would fit or less, more or less. Some lots may fit more and some lots will fit less. But overall, like if you take the 125 acres that this district encompasses, there would be far less than 125 homes.
What is the total acreage of land that in this plan is either residential only or mixed use?
Total acreage that is residential only or mixed use. Do you want to know the?
Yellow.
Yeah,
Purple
so
and the yellow.
the
Yeah,
purple and the
purple.
yellow. So that is. I need a calculator real quick. Okay, so 48, 47, 6 plus 15. That would be 97 acres.
Okay. And so if you went with something that, if we had, for the sake of our, so, because in my thought, yes, we should definitely have less than 125 houses, right?
Mhm.
Because some of that land is not
Mhm.
residential, so I don't feel like that counts towards
That's fair.
housing. So my guess is we should have no more than 97
Houses
Houses.
total in this entire
total
district.
in this whole area, given that there's only, and it may not be that much, right? Because if some of it then becomes commercial, then you don't take, so in that mixed use, right? So for the sake of argument, the let property,
Mhm.
if that ends up turning into something commercial, right?
Mhm.
Then I don't think it's fair to say like, well, that could have been 20 houses, so let's put an additional 20 houses on the Priebus and Odell property because.
Sure, I get where you're going with that. So let's take this 97 and subtract the areas that would be eligible for commercial. For a
Well, I
thought
mean, but
system.
they could be residential, which is fine
Right.
too, right? I just wanna make sure that we don't set it up to give away more than what we need to in terms of density.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, I wanna make sure that like.
Only knocking
that-
28 houses off of the total if you went with a total 125, which I understand what you're saying, but that's, and I think that what you showed me earlier is still well below that
Right,
threshold.
and I'm gonna pull that up right as soon as I finish describing this.
And that's really good that it's that much lower than that.
Yeah,
As far as
okay.
that goes.
Okay. So we have the commercial only couple of nodes. These would be mostly commercial only because there's not really enough room to fit a row of residences in the back. So instead, we'd have commercial in the front and 100-foot at least buffer. There's one building that may not be able to have a 100-foot buffer, but that building I've already written in a later part would be required to mitigate that by having a thicker buffer. And then the existing building only sub-district would have, basically you're only allowed to have those two existing buildings. Expansions are allowed, like additions, but they have to be in the character of the building, and they can't increase, you can't have a front extension or a side yard extension that increases the setback past these setbacks here, basically. And then finally, the civic district, which would have the churches and the government property, and those buildings are obviously limited to church and government functions. So those are the 5 district types in detail, and other than fleshing this out a little bit and kind of finagling the fine details, that's what would largely define what goes in what district. In addition to the next section, which I will explain in a bit, that explains the details of the building types themselves. But this section is what would define essentially what buildings go in which district.
Hey, Rohit, this is Jake. Can I
Yes.
ask a question?
Yes.
And I know that you mentioned this, but I just want to clarify once again. In the mixed-use district, it used to be, you would delineate between the commercial and residential. I know the point of this is just to show sort of like the big area. The purple section by the corner, by the traffic circle, like that's clear that residential and commercial will be sort of intermingled throughout that section. On the other side, though, it's far more, this is residential, this is commercial. I just want to clarify, confirm that the commercial is on the street only back to a certain point, and then everything else is residential.
Right. So later in this district, it's really explained in the kind of what's allowed to be adjacent to what section, that you would only really be allowed to have residences all along this and this part of these properties, and the front would be the commercial sections. Like, you'd have to have at least this be residential, but this property here would probably then have some, let me pick a good color, some cluster type residential here.
Isn't that a what? Isn't that a?
Yeah, it's a wetland.
Yeah, there's a body of water there.
I did try to draw that to be outside of the wetland, but I understand what you're saying. Like here, they could have cluster type residential here, and then either a buffer or some more large lot residential here. And then the commercial would be in this area here. That's basically what you're asking, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, again, I get the spot on the corner there. It'll be sort of, the idea is that it will be mixed throughout. That's not what has been discussed on the other side of 3 Pond Acres. So I just wanted to clarify.
Right. In this diagram, it's kind of a general mapping that these properties would be mixed use, but not to say that you could put commercial anywhere and you could put residential anywhere. It's not like that. That's not what this means.
Okay.
Well, and we still somewhere in here, commercial is only X number of feet deep from the road.
I don't think I included that. Just because I didn't really find a good distance that's kind of formulaic for any of these properties, because they all have different kind of constraints. What I did think of instead to do was, like I said, to say, and you know what, I'll just go to that section of the code for the sake of discussion now. That's too far. Hello. It's really this section here. This and this. So this map that describes, John, you're echoing, so I'm going to mute you. Sorry. This map here that basically defines, all right. Hold on. All right, that'll do. This map here defines the surface, basically. This would be defined as the rural adjacent. This back here is a suburban adjacent, and this blue line is the road adjacent, right? So then back here, which I really wish this ended up on one page, would have loved that. But here is where we say commercial is not allowed to be up against the rural residential.
Just a spray.
The cluster residential is not allowed to be directly adjacent to rural residential. And suburban residential can be adjacent with a 25-foot buffer. And then against the suburban residential, which is this interface here, then you have the 25-foot buffer that's allowed for both residential types, and a 100-foot buffer if it's adjacent to the commercial. And then for the existing commercial, the existing buildings, no, that's what the E stands for. That's how, I figured we would take that as a special case. You can't really have the room for that 100-foot buffer, but in exchange you have 2+ rows of evergreens and an opaque fence, and in exchange you have a limited list of commercial uses, and a lot more on that list are special use permits. So you'd have to go through the boards and have this kind of back and forth. So does that answer both of those questions?
My property on Newtown Road could not have a brew pub going, right?
And so in this version of the uses list, there were a few uses that I left off, but of course this is a first draft, and after speaking with you and some other people, I figured there's really no and you know what, I'm gonna do track changes. There's really no reason to not allow things outright, potentially putting an S here and here, so that if you at some point came back to the Village of Marvin and said, hey, I do want a brewery in this building, then Jake could come into that public hearing and say, this is why XYZ, I don't want you to do it, or this is why ABC, what you need to do to make me happy with it. That's what all the S's are in this table, but we really are jumping around now. And I did say in the beginning that I would like to keep the conversation
In order?
Yeah, in order. That's the danger of putting discussion of this one document in the agenda, just like that. Anyway, are there any more, hopefully that answered your questions, both Jake and John, about the, what's allowed against what, right?
Rohit, can you briefly show me attendance? I want to see if anyone else has joined.
Okay.
Yep, I'm all set.
Awesome.
Rohit,
Tim Fincher.
Yes.
this is much more of your document than we had at the last planning board, correct?
Yes, in the planning board meeting, I just had the district types and the building types ready.
And I'll be honest, I didn't read this depth of it. And just for everybody else, I was not real sure about this type of zoning originally when Rohit, proposed it. The concept I'm starting to warm with. And he also made a reference that he had not had a chance to change the housing types. At the planning board meeting, I said, the name of this district is the Heritage District, and we're looking at houses that look like Marvin Creek. That's not heritage. Heritage is the old Roan house, which is over in Mecklenburg County now, that used to be adjacent to the Banks Presbyterian Church. And for lack of better description, the Audrey development over in Mecklenburg County on Wade Audrey that are, look like they've been, pretty old homes. To me, that's what, heritage housing or commercial or anything else ought to look like it's been there 100 years versus Marvin Creek, which no one would think it's been here very long.
John, I will submit to you that my property on Newtown was built in 1901. It's more than 100 years.
Take their
I
recommendation to remove the
don't know how that looks like what you're trying to say. There's not much way to be changed that way.
Well, I'm not, casting, but as I understand, I go back and call it the Deadweiler House up at the intersection of Marvin Road and Newtown. When it was built originally, I saw the photos of it. It didn't look like that back then. It looked more like the old house over on Newtown right before you get to Providence that's all boarded up now. And I'm not saying that we go to, brown, ugly, wore out houses, but something that looks like it's been around a while instead of like Marvin Creek.
classic architecture. Yeah, like your your Victorian, Tudor, Charleston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Craftsman, like Village Hall.
And I think well, you told me that that house at some point in the past had been brick veneered. It was not originally brick in 1901.
That's what I've been told. I think I was told it might have been in 1940, but I would much rather have my property being bricked up than whatever it was before, I think.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is.
I'm just trying to say that if we're gonna call it Heritage District, it ought to look, old, some history or heritage to it.
Well, let me let you know that also Gene Stowe, wrote the book about inherit land. He mentioned to me he thought that the property I owned was across the street from the Ross sisters and was built for the adopted black boy of the sisters when he was grown, an adult. So I think that's a little bit of heritage information, if that is true. So throwing that out.
It's the brick bungalow across the street from Town Hall.
Next to Left
Oh,
Tree
okay.
Pond.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
It's very good to know. So I think I really do want to take upon the planning board's recommendation when we get to the housing, the building type, when we get to the building type section, I will ask for your consensus or recommendation to remove the Marvin vernacular type overall, just because of those reasons. But right now, I think I've reached the end of the district types, the kind of which buildings are allowed in which district, and kind of focusing on these, cottage and village types for the commercial, like potentially one farm-looking house that would house some sort of 10,000 or 15,000 square foot commercial uses, very small. Like if you've been in the Publix, the architecture is great, but we're talking about like a fifth of that size, for some sort of specialty retail store that was discussed. And then those cottage or Charleston kinds of houses for the Heritage District residential portion. So does that all sound good in concept? This is not the last time that you're going to be able to say anything about it, but does that all sound good in concept as a way to define what gets built where?
I think this is fantastic in comparison to what we've been looking at. I really do.
Thank you.
I think you also know I would tell you if I thought otherwise at this point, but I think that this is, a nice way to go. I still have some kind of overarching concerns about I understand that the concept of having the patio homes in the center, and that this idea that we need additional people in the area so that they can walk to some of these businesses. And I don't know what changes in Marvin to allow people to walk around here. Right?
Well, yes, I
Proximity
think now,
for one
yeah.
would be close, because it's in the district, and there would be sidewalks that are built into the district that would allow for pedestrian traffic within the district, and close proximity as well, so.
But that would assume that we have a single developer, right, that would be done, because if this spot gets built, and then that spot gets built, and then that spot gets built, even if it's up to the individual developers to make sure that there's walkways, we might have patio homes for 25 years before they have anywhere to walk to,
I think that.
right?
And I'm not sure where we are with this as a village, but as far as the common grounds, how are we going to go about the sidewalks and common areas, the public areas?
So that's what the CRTPO project is about.
Okay.
We did get $1 million grant. We're gonna 40% match to build a walkway from end to end, all the way up to Saddle Avenue on Marvin Road.
That's right.
All the way up to the place that the trail ends currently in on the other side of the preserve at Yellow Jasmine. So the connectivity piece of it will be a project that will be managed by the village.
Which would make sense, because then you have continuity in that project. And it'd be done at one time, which would connect everybody's property to make it all as each piece comes in, it's automatically gonna be connected to the next piece by that piece going in.
Right. And that is an already awarded federally funded project. We just got it last year.
And that happens then on both sides.
That will be on one side, but we will also, through the revenue of the district, create that walkway on the other side. Like the whole connectivity, both sides situation is going to be managed by the village, and we've already got a major chunk of it, like funded, basically.
Okay.
And working on subsequent funding to finish it,
Yes.
so.
So a lot of questions of, you know, what this zoning might actually cause the site to look like, have arisen. The council has directed me not to actually, you know, design sites, but to coerce property owners or land designers to submit something. And so this is the first submission I've received from a developer who is intending to develop the residential only node almost in entirety. All right, so here it is. This would be the residential only node, the 47 acres there. And
I'll
this,
zoom in some.
yes, I'll zoom in a little bit here. Let me see if I can.
And that's just what they're proposing at
This
this
is-
point.
this is-
No
yes.
concrete anything, it's just a proposal.
Right, this is our, you know, after a back and forth of what the vision would be for this district, they have come back with this proposal with the, what they're calling estate lots, you know, around the back. They've put one, what they've called the Meadowlark style lot, here. A 10-acre minimum park up here, and then this, they've put 10,000 square foot lots, all kind of alley type, so that, you know, you have that archery neighborhood kind of feel. And they even also said that the archery neighborhood would be a great product for this community, and they've taken some of the pictures here as example architecture from that neighborhood. So here there are a total of 51 houses. Overall, of course, as we said, you know, there would be 97 eligible acres for housing. I estimate maybe 20 to 25 on this one, maybe 8 here, and maybe 8 on that one. So if you were to take this 51, add 25, add 8, and add another 8, we're at 92, which is less than the 97 in the overall picture. And the pedestrian connectivity would happen within the neighborhood. That was another question that you brought up. In our greenway plan, you know, what is the situation of people, you know, being able to walk? They'd walk through the neighborhood, not around the outside. Big buffer. The Coates' house is buffered. And I mean, this driveway is not in a really good spot because Meadowlark is a private road. We talked about putting it on the, what is the, actually would be the public section of the road, which ends right about here. So the driveway really should be about here, but we're not really talking about the site specifics. I think this, after a couple of back and forths, does check off pretty much all the boxes of, you know, what you would look like, what you would look for in, you know, this form-based type of district. Can I?
What do you think?
Rohit?
Yes. Yes.
Back to the site plan, or preliminary plan. What's going on up in, I'll call it the top right corner?
Top right
Where you were
corner.
talking about the driveway off
Yeah.
onto Meadowlark.
So this is where we're talking about that 30% public open space, right? So, I mean, this is obviously just a site plan, and it kind of,
Yeah, it's just a first blush.
Right.
So, but I mean, you know, they obviously sort of penciled in, you know, this could be this, or what is, I
Right.
can't see it.
they've got some parking spaces here, a pavilion here, some fields, some trails.
Is that an amphitheater?
Yes.
Just zoom in on that one spot, yeah, there you go. See the detail there.
Yes. Some fields and amphitheater facing the roundabout, so it's facing away from any residences, which are back here and up here. And a stormwater detention pond that they've drawn a lake around, which if you've encountered any like that, it's actually a really good use of space. Pleasant to walk around, like Pineville Lake Park, if you've ever been there, for example.
Legacy Park,
Yeah,
their retention pond is actually a lake that they keep full with a well, so it stays full all the time.
that's a good point. So yeah, I mean, this is that first blush, like you said, you know, an example of what a neighborhood that would look like, that you know, a node would look like, that satisfied all of the requirements of this form-based code.
What's the buffer on the outside edge against Newtown Road?
This should be 100 feet here.
100 foot of
Yeah,
undisturbed, basically, with evergreen, some kind of understory on the road side.
Yes, some sort of evergreen understory, so that the view is more fully blocked from the road than just the mature trees. That is a good point also.
So the view that's there now, basically you'll have some evergreen in front of it, and then it'll be the same view as what you're still looking at.
Right, as you drive down Newtown Road. The MU and RO cluster residential is the proposed use, and the major road is the existing use. So you get the 100-foot tree buffer. That's how this matrix kind of adds up, right? That's how you utilize this matrix for, you know, deciding what goes where. What else? Existing rural cluster is not allowed to be directly adjacent. Commercial's not applicable. And suburban residential, which is what this would be, is the only thing that's allowed to be up against rural residential, and that of course has just a 25-foot tree buffer, but that's what is currently allowed anyhow. It could be increased. It's not, nothing's really set in stone here. I'm just kind of walking through how this buffer matrix was, you know, is basically the way that defines what is allowed to be adjacent to what. Any questions so far? If there's not any questions on, you know, the site plan or the, you know, the building types, I mean the district types, I'd move on to the building types, but of course any commentary is welcome, and any section could be gone back to if you realize you have any questions. How do you feel?
I don't hate it.
There's
I feel like,
moving forward.
because I'll tell you, like, I came up here, I was like, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna go up to the town council, like, I'm gonna be in the hall, so like, we can have a conversation, not risking having any IT issues, like,
Building
even
burning
from here to there,
down.
like, it could happen. I mean, would I rather, like, we not develop? Yes, like, we moved out here and bought my parents' farm for the idea of, like, forever having farms out here, right? And not having, you know, like, it being quiet and whatever. And I think that I'm not sold on the idea of Marvin becoming super walkable, because I think, like, if you really want it to be super walkable, like, move to Waxhaw, move to Matthews, move to like, apparently, like, Mineral Springs is becoming walkable, right? Like, I don't know that we need to be, I can't imagine, probably because of where I live, like, the likelihood of ever walking on any part of Newtown Road, right? Like, that just doesn't strike me as a thing that's gonna, like, how do you cross the street without getting hit by a Mack truck, right? I mean, I don't know. So I still struggle with some of that, but if I
go
also
ahead.
agree that at a
Do
certain
you bring
point,
up what I mentioned to you today to her?
can I finish my thought?
Well, it's pertinent to your thought. It's
Oh.
pertinent to the walkability of Marvin Road. If you can't visualize it, I came up with some ideas with Rohit that could make it though.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. I think he's basically trying to come up with answers to that question.
Okay.
We were kind of going through Matthews. Let's go to maps here. And we saw these speed tables.
Yeah, downtown Matthews,
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with them.
Right. Anyone who's driven down this road here should be highly familiar with these guys. The speed tables, the little signs here and here, raised crosswalks. That will slow you down.
The bump outs.
Yeah, the bump outs too. These guys, they'll slow you down. There's if the Marvin Council and DOT come to a point where we do actually agree to take over Newtown Road, we'll have the full liberty to install any number of, traffic calming devices on Newtown Road as part of this
Not
project.
to mention that our idea through the district, it would be a 25 mile per hour speed zone, which would greatly.
Also, the possibility of a crosswalk bridge.
Oh,
That
like
I
in
discussed
Waxhaw.
with you, Rohit,
Yes.
like Waxhaw.
Yeah, the only thing about that is cost from council's standpoint, from the village standpoint, for tax dollars. A bridge like that would be a costly thing, and I think that.
That's where you would bring in a developer who's got a vested interest in the parcel that they're developing. It would throw the money at that to make sure that they could have walkability to their project.
That's a good point. I don't think that was something that we could require, but any solutions are good solutions.
I mean, they have them in Vegas too. I mean, they have walk bridges on major thoroughfares in a lot of places, but again, it's cost, and we've.
I think there's a big difference between Marvin and Vegas.
Right, I'm just citing examples, but my thing is that, there is a significant cost in a pedestrian bridge crossing. And, we've talked about this district, and as much as we're restricting it to accommodate what Marvin wants, we have to be careful about balancing the budget. I mean, and that's a fairly expensive piece. I mean, are you willing to pony up the money for that?
Developers that could possibly pay for that. I'm not saying Marvin would. I'm just saying that would be something that could be possibly negotiated with developers.
You mean like at the time of the development plan being discussed, right? The actual
Right, well,
site.
and I'm not saying Marvin, what I'm saying is from a business point of view, if I'm a developer and I'm limited to what I can put in, can I stomach the cost of a bridge?
It'd be several $1 million.
That's
for
that
one
that's
I
where
would
I'm
say
coming
that
from.
Toll Brothers actually gave Marvin the land which they are building the town hall whenever they put in the preserve. That was a very expensive piece of land,
That's a good
and they
point.
gave it to Marvin.
I think your point is that maybe a big developer could actually stomach the cost if it meant they could see
It's all about
a
the
return.
return.
Yeah.
It's all about the return, and if it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm not poo-pooing the idea. I'm just putting out that it's an expensive thing to do, and if a developer decides they want to throw that kind of money at it, I'm all for it. I'm not against it. I'm just citing that it's an expensive piece to this puzzle, and there are some other traffic calming things that could be less expensive.
And I respect your comment regarding that, but I'm in real estate. I'm also in commercial real estate. I know that commercial developers will pay a lot. for a small little section of a road to make a bridge, to make sure that they have walkability that will direct to their development for retail purposes. I'm going to tell you, it's all day long, period.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I think there's probably no need in debating this at the moment, but let me just sort of throw out, a comment on bridges. Waxhaw has geography working with them because the railroad is below grade basically there. And so they didn't have to go quite as high. If you want to look at something at grade, look at up in Charlotte on South Boulevard for the footbridge that goes over top of the rail tracks there at South Boulevard and was it Sharon Road West or whatever, about the Lance plant. I mean, it takes a lot of geography to get that sort of bridge in. So, and it's a we don't need to just, a long dissertation on it now because it's immaterial, but, we're talking about relatively small geography that we've got to work with here. And so if you look at what's up there on South Boulevard, it would take a lot of land to physically do it.
Okay, John, I want to propose to you to consider the fact that Marvin owns a piece of land that's right there at the roundabout, the second roundabout, okay? The developer going in on that corner across the street, I'm sure would consider the fact that if Marvin would allow them to do so, that would be a very viable possibility for them to build. I'm going to tell you that right, for sure, okay? I know I've seen much more expensive projects that have entailed much more effort by developers to make sure that they have everything in place to make sure they get as many people accessible to their retail properties, period.
I think at this point, I think both points are valid, but I think what I'm hearing from John, I agree with is no, we're gonna cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah.
Well,
Terrible joke of the day right now.
Okay.
Well done.
All right. As long as we don't disallow it in this code, it's always up for consideration at the time that a development proposal is actually being seen by the village. So I think I would like to leave it there with all due respect to everyone in this discussion.
Can I add a little bit there? I was just bringing up some possible solutions.
Yes, of course.
To answer
The original question, which was how do we walk across the
questions
road?
regarding the traffic and walkability.
Right. There are a lot of options on the table. I think that's a good way to end that part of the conversation. Thank you, Will, very much. Okay, so if there are no more comments on the district types, I will move into the building types. Yeah? Okay. So building types, this is also a big player in what makes a form-based code very fascinating and effective, is that we can regulate that even commercial buildings could look like houses. Houses would look like houses, obviously, and then commercial buildings would also look like houses. There are, and I would actually be requesting at this meeting a consensus to remove the Marvin vernacular, which is, vernacular is just a word to say, a building that looks like this. But then stick to even the small lot home instead of having this patio home, just kind of stick to these Charleston cottage bungalow.
Can you show what the Marvin vernacular looks like again? I'm sorry.
Yes. Here's the Marvin vernacular. I've taken some screenshots. This is from Ladera, some are from Weddington Chase, Providence Glen, even Providence down south would be a good example. It's basically your, late
McMansion?
Yeah, your late 20th century.
Let's ditch it.
Yeah?
I move to ditch it.
Okay, there's a motion on the table.
I don't know if you need a motion for that.
Well, there is a motion on the
Okay.
table. So, to remove the Marvin vernacular from the building types. Any further discussion on that?
So you just remove the word Marvin vernacular.
I'm gonna remove this page, basically.
Okay, but we're not gonna remove that house size.
No, they would be
It's just the
reflected.
style,
Right,
the
they
look
would
of
be
it.
reflected
Fair
in the
enough. In the other part.
village house and
Yeah.
the southern colonial styles.
Okay.
To remove the Marvin vernacular, what?
The Marvin vernacular building, building type A, if you want to call it, from the zoning district. And yeah, so you'll notice that the lot kind of dimensions kind of match. Like I said, we extracted the DNA of this kind of Marvin specific house and applied it to the other special kind of houses here. So we're not losing this lot size by saying we don't want this kind of building in this district.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table, so there
Yes.
needs to be a vote.
Yes, so any further discussion on that? I'm gonna stop sharing for a second so I can see everyone. Okay, all in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Need Tim, Jake, and Dorota.
Yeah, Jake.
Okay, need Dorota and Tim.
Oh, I already said.
Oh, okay, I need.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, Tim. Then we need Tim.
Okay.
I can't hear Tim.
He hasn't unmuted himself. Oh, there he goes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If we can remove it from the Marvin district, like, let's say ours is, our piece is on Waxhaw Marvin Road, or has a lot of road frontage. Other houses down Marvin Waxhaw Road are Marvin vernacular. If we keep going around, I guess I'd have to vote no, so if I have to develop it as residential, I can keep in the same type houses in Providence down south, right?
I suppose if you were gonna develop only residential in a not Marvin Heritage District future, then this discussion wouldn't even apply to you. If that's your question.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just wondering about my options, that's all. I think the Johnson property down the street has been subdivided into lots, 10 acres, and they're trying to sell them in 3-acre chunks. Is that
Yeah.
right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And, I don't know, depending on how we go with that, I was just kicking around that option if the district, feels like, I don't know, I'm just wondering about, I don't know how many options I can get rid of at this point.
Well, I guess I can re-explain it. I'm not trying to influence your vote, but removing the Marvin vernacular house still allows you to build the other, kind of more colonial.
No, I know the Roan
Okay.
Artery house well, I know, several of the old houses, we had a couple of good houses on the property across the street from where this is, but, it became my cousin's and not mine, so they're not here any longer. So.
Go ahead. Can I interject here a minute, Tim, and ask, are you saying, Rohit, that he could build the same as the neighborhood artery style house?
Not in the entirety of the district, because again, cluster wouldn't be allowed adjacent to rural. So you'd have to, you could build like that kind of house, but they'd have to be on your, half
1
acre.
acre.
Yeah, your at least half acre, size
Or
lots.
aggregate total for common area acres, yeah.
Right. And in addition to the rear buffers and the front buffers, if you were to do an only residential piece, you'd still not really be fitting much I mean, you might have a little more than 1 unit per acre, but not like it's 13 acres and you do half acres. That means you could fit 26. No, not really, not at all. It'd probably be close to 15 at most. That's my estimate.
Well, I don't know, I was just looking at the land cost for the old Johnson property, and it would kind of command a big house price you put on it if you had to put 13 houses on it. That's all. So,
Well,
and you'd want to build a bigger house.
Right.
Tim, it doesn't exclude the square footage, it's just the style.
Like it's just the architecture.
Just the architecture. It doesn't preclude you from building a 6,000 square foot house, because the other examples, 2 of them allow us up to 6,000, I believe it is.
I think it was
It's the-
7,000.
7,000.
Yeah.
It's the Greek Revival,
So you
Southern
can still build
Colonial.
a big house, it's just that particular architectural style. That's the only thing that they're debating at this point.
That's correct.
Which is kind of like in line with Ardrey subdivision.
Right.
Right, yeah, I'm familiar with that. That's all, I'm just, I like these houses, but I haven't talked with the builder about what the cost would be to try to build that type house, or a row of them, or whatever, so, that's what we wound up doing.
Okay.
So I don't know, vernacular is that's a broad term sometimes, so.
It really is. I mean, it was meant to be broad.
Yeah, it's pretty broad. So I don't know, I guess I just vote to leave it open until we get this thing, more down to brass tacks, instead of saying what all, we don't want just yet, in my case.
I would actually second his motion too.
Wait.
Okay, so I guess
There's competing
no,
motions
that's
here.
fine. There's a counter motion to not vote on this motion.
We've already voted on this motion though.
But Tim hasn't voted yet. He's making the counter motion.
Correct.
Oh, I need to get out Robert's rules here, but
I think that part's fine. So,
The motion hadn't been accepted because Tim hadn't voted.
right.
the motion was we started moving to a vote.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already moved past discussion into a vote. This is where it gets complicated when we move fast.
Well, the problem is with he was having technical difficulties where he couldn't speak during the discussion period, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was late, I had a meeting before this one today, I couldn't get out of it, so.
Okay, so let me ask this: make that second motion again.
Motion
I
is
make the second motion of Tim's motion.
Okay, Tim, what was your motion?
to not vote on this right now.
To table,
To table it, I guess,
Vernacular.
until, yeah, I'm just thinking of Marvin vernacular could be very broad as far as any house built in the last 20 years could fit into the Marvin vernacular. I
Right.
guess.
And that was the intention.
And that, I understand we're doing it, but it's,
he needs to do more consultation with his builders.
If I had to, we had a little site plan, but it got out on, for everybody to see. And all it was like the thing over there that we just looked at. It was just something to get the conversation started. That's all we meant with that. It wasn't by all means, one and done. But I have to, since I got a feeling that is not what Marvin wants. I have to leave my options open, and maybe the Marvin vernacular it cuts down on my options. So that's all.
Okay, procedurally here. Okay, so do you want to make a motion to table this discussion and vote until a future meeting?
That's fine with me. That's fine with me.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we can make that motion. Okay, so Tim made that motion. Further discussion. Okay, now you can
I
vote.
second the motion.
You
Okay.
don't need a second, but
If there's not any other discussion, can we get a vote on that? All in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Vote from a motion.
Okay, so Tim,
Okay.
Will,
Sure.
Melinda. That leaves Jake, John, and Dorota.
Aye.
John and Dorota.
No,
Okay. Well, that's understandable because you made the first motion.
And John?
I just, go with the first motion.
Okay.
So I'm good.
So John's a no.
All right.
Okay,
well,
so
that still passes.
That
4-2.
motion passes 3-2, overriding the first motion.
Was it
So-
4-2? I think 4-2.
Oh,
Okay.
4-2?
Yeah.
My bad. Apologize.
All that means is that we'll just talk about it again at the next meeting, which is not really the end of the world there.
Hold on a
Alright.
second. I didn't have someone's vote recorded for the last motion.
Will, Tim, Jake, and Melinda said yes, and Dorota and John said no for this current motion. For the previous motion, everyone said yes except for Tim, but that vote never concluded because he counter motion.
Okay. I'll go with that. I'll figure that out.
All right, great.
This
So.
is good, it's testing your Robert's rules.
Yeah, honestly, it's good because our council meetings have been so smooth recently that Austin really hasn't had any complicated situations as our clerk yet.
Let's keep it that way.
I second that. Okay, so in the other housing types, there are the cottage commercial that really reflects the old Crane store and the Union Market, if you've seen that on Providence Road, just north of Newtown Road. Those are our local examples, and then we have a couple examples from Bluffton. It's that, sometimes shotgun type house with the front door and the kind of long but narrow building. That's pretty characteristic of this area as well. And then there's the Village House, which is your more like square building. I have a couple examples. This one's from Concord here. This one's from Monroe. It's really cool. This is the Alice Jewels coffee house, and there's also a thrift store. It's two shops side by side in the same building with a little seating area in the front. I suppose something in this district might be a little upscale with that plaza area, but I mean, in concept, that's pretty good to have an example. Out here is that Cheshire Village, Black Mountain, and this is in Serenby Village in the south of Atlanta area. Also pretty cool form-based code. But anyway, none of these pictures are like, this is what you have to build. Precedent imagery just means here's what we're talking about, and here are some examples for you to make your architecture decisions off of. And then of course we have this Greek revival / Southern colonial, which I've grouped in the same category because the way that the Deadweiler house was built has a lot of Greek revival components in it. But then there's a Southern colonial, Charleston type, which is what the J.J. Roan house looks a lot like. And so, you have that porch with the second floor balcony. Of course, that doesn't, need to be the case. But in a potentially first floor, restaurant, maybe second floor office kind of situation, it'd be very cool to have, a balcony if you're, having an office on the second floor or something like that. And then there's this conventional square commercial, which I've put in a couple of barn-looking buildings, and I've put our Publix here too. And then this building here, I mean, these are obviously, again, precedent imagery for which to base your decisions off of at the time of the development plan actually being submitted. But the idea here would be to facilitate some sort of, small grocery store, but have a four-sided rural building, basically. And those are the building types so far. I also want to add the bungalow type, which is what Will's house looks like. I realized that a little late, but I mean, it would be similar, pretty much the same lot configuration as the cottage style, but it'd be more long width-wise. And it might have a porch, like a balcony, like a porch as well. So any questions on the building types other than the ones we've already mentioned, building types? Looking good? Awesome.
Hey,
Yes.
one question, Rohit, sorry.
Yes.
Are you going to add that, or do you need any kind of code or anything?
No, I'm gonna add that. It's just that I hadn't gotten around to it. The bungalow is obviously also another Marvin Heritage District type of building. So just like I haven't gotten around to adding a lot of other things in this code, I'm just gonna go ahead and add that.
That's
for the
fine.
next meeting.
That's an existing example.
Yeah, in the
district.
actual district
Yeah.
itself, right. So, it's just something I haven't gotten around to. So again, open space standards is something that I really wanted to flesh out before I even really got to putting it out to the public, because I hate putting out, I would hate to put out an unfinished open space standard section because it's very important. But at this point, based on the survey that this committee did in the very beginning of the committee, I basically kind of narrowed it down to about 30% of public open space would be the desire. And if you're looking at a 125 acre district, 30% is a little over 40 acres that would be added to Marvin of public open space. And that would be an amazing asset. And to require that of the property owners would be a pretty big benefit. Of course, in exchange, these same buildings would be on slightly smaller lots, but 30% of usable space would be then defined. What is public open space? That would also be defined in this section. Like, if you have a wetland, you'd have to have trails. If you have a stormwater detention, you have to have trails around that. Or a view shed could be open space if it were designed like a plaza. Things like that. I want to flesh that out before I talk about it. So that's just kind of what's going there. And of course, I think we've already talked about this buffer section in depth. That's another pun because the buffers have to deal with the depth of...
Second terrible joke, Rohit.
Okay, all right, thank you. But I mean, this is also a very important section, and I don't expect anyone to have formed their full opinions without the discussion of today's meeting. But basically, again, this is a section that kind of defines what's allowed to be adjacent to what, and if it is, then how much depth of trees that you're going to have. So, for example, when a commercial is up against the road, you can have 50-foot view shed, but it has to be like a public plaza space. And of course, existing buildings are exempt because they already exist, etc. So, what are your comments on that? Like that way of defining, how much buffers are there? And also, I'm going to add some pictures to this section. I already had pictures in the last packet. I don't know if it made it into this packet. No, it didn't. But it will be in the final version. I did have pictures, like some like stacked. This is where it is, and this is what it looks like on Street View. So that if you wanted to go out there and see what it looks like, you would see it.
I got a question about the buffer.
Sure.
What if you have a low spot area that is backing up to the residential?
Mm-hmm.
And if you put in the fencing and everything, it might not be tall enough because it's so low backing up to the residential. And as far as the trees, it will take a while for them to grow, and whatever, Leyden cypress or whatever. I'm just trying to get an idea. The property that I've got backs up to the one that Jake is representing, And it also has a major flooding problem because of berms that were put in right behind the property, and it's a big swamp back there. So if that has to be taken care of in a buffer situation, there's going to be a little bit more extensive work and cost on my part. So I'm just kind of curious about that. Elaborate some.
Wow, elaborate on that. I'm not sure. Not sure how to elaborate on that. All I can really say at this point is, well, trees are really good at soaking up water, and if you've got a berm there, the berm is probably blocking the water flow. And having trees instead of a berm, every type of buffer has its pros and cons. Obviously, a berm can affect drainage negatively, but only having trees, they can take time to mature. So, like as you said, I don't really have an answer to that. But what do you think? What do you think would be the best way to satisfy that issue? And Jake, what do you think?
Well, I don't know if this is the appropriate time or place to talk about an ongoing issue that you've got with the property owner.
Sure.
But, so, I don't think I'm going to comment on that. But is there anything else you'd like me to comment on?
No, if you don't want to make a comment, you don't have to.
I'll just get I'll get whatever is needed for that buffer in every way possible and have a landscape engineer look at it, and then I will determine from that point on.
Okay, that sounds good. Do it sooner than later so we can incorporate what you find in this district. And then I guess we can move on. Okay, and like I explained before, this is kind of how I defined the existing, what is adjacent to the existing. I'll zoom in a little bit here. So, like I said, I defined this to be the rural subdivision. Like the property is backing up to a rural subdivision. It's this surface here. These surfaces here are backing up to a road, major road, except for this little enclave of where the Coates did not want to be part of the district, so I counted that as suburban surface. So like when this residential node and this TJ's little node there, that's how those properties would respect the adjacency to the Coates house. And then of course the preserve is a suburban subdivision node. So does anyone have any comments on that? Do you have any comments on that? That looks pretty accurate, right? And of course the rural subdivision would have much greater limitations on what can be directly adjacent. And that's why I've kind of defined these three surfaces. Again, this is also another way that form-based code is a really good way to handle this kind of district, because it defines how the district feels. Like that's what this is based on, not arbitrary text. It's a lot of pictures. I like pictures. The streetscape is definitely a in progress section, but I did include my first pass at the street cross sections, which if you give me 1 second, I'm going to figure out how to turn that around so that you can see it. I think I'm going to go to layout. I'm going to make this landscape for a second, and then I'm going to take this. Oh, this is going to be a little harder to bop around, but I'm going to do it. All right. So, I mean, this is, again, my first pass at the idea. Planning board has tossed around for at least a year or more that when you drive down the street, it's the downtown, but it's also got to retain that rural feeling. So we don't want like a Waxhaw situation where, you've got the road, the parking, the curb, and the building. That's too close. But then, of course, in some cases, this is some sort of walkable district, so if you put the buildings too far, then people won't feel like walking down the street and up to that building. So the happy medium, I felt like, was 50 feet. We've got this travel lane here, two-way travel lane, no on-street parking. There may be opportunities for some angled parking, but that wouldn't be a typical section. That might be a specific section. A ditch, which I was talking to Councilman Wortman earlier, might need to be made wider, so that you're not falling off into the ditch if you drive off the road or anything like that. And then you have this plants and furniture strip. What that means is your street trees, your plant beds, and then street furniture basically means anything that you would see along the street that helps give character to the district. So what this is in the picture is a wayfinding sign. You walk up to it and then you see where everything is on the street. Other street furniture includes benches, lamps, planters, you name it.
Don't forget the hitching posts.
Right, hitching posts for horses. That's fully real. It's something that Meadowlark would love to actually see.
In town I grew up in.
Yeah.
Still there.
Yeah.
Still
the
decorative.
University of Wyoming on Prexy's pasture where people would bring their horses and you could tie them.
Oh, they actually
Mhm.
used them. That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. And then so you have your multi-use path also. So our typical multi-use paths are 6 feet, but I didn't want to restrict it to being 6 feet because in a downtown district, you could have a 10-foot path and it would, you'd have a lot more people walking down a new town road that, had these kind of buildings on it than your, like Marvin Loop Trail. So, I didn't want to limit it. That's why I put 10 plus, if you saw that. 6 to 10 plus. If you wanted a 15-foot side, if the developer wanted to build a 15-foot sidewalk, I figure, be our guest. And then there's this viewshed plaza, which I've been alluding to throughout this discussion, but a viewshed plaza is where you have your cafe seating, and that's really most of the things that's going to be what's in most of viewshed plaza. But there's also your maybe a water fountain or and maybe if it's big enough a playground. But those are just some ideas there. But a viewshed plaza is basically the feature in between the sidewalk and the building face where public amenities related to the place of business would go. And it also kind of alludes to the front yard of a normal house. Like I said, the form-based code really gives us the opportunity to make this district look like houses along Newtown Road, and this is part of it, having that viewshed plaza that would give the same energy as a front yard of a house. And then finally your porch or balcony, where an awning, an arcade, or a covered patio could actually extend up to 15 feet from the face of the building, and maybe even what that would mean is even cover some of the viewshed plaza area. And I'm gonna real quick pull up an example. I took a vacation to Bluffton, and of course I did work when I was there, but I paid attention to some of the really nice view sheds that they have. Of course, some are going to be too close to the road for what we're trying to do here. But this is the spirit of a roof coming over what would be the viewshed plaza. And there's another one that kind of looks more like a porch, but there's another one that had a really long
Kind of like an old-time gas station.
Yeah, as opposed to like a balcony. I thought it was at that corner. That must have not been the one. Let me go back to satellite for a real quick second. If I can't find it in 30 seconds, I'm just going to skip it. Is anyone timing me?
You getting close?
All right. Like I'm just gonna skip it, but I think that building kind of started to make that point. No, I'm gonna skip it. But I think that building sort of made the point that you know there is an option, you know, for whatever, you know, architecture that these buildings could have. You know, could have some sort of porch, but it could also have an awning that covers this plaza area. And that's pretty much it for the major road commercial cross section. Of course, the internal roads, they're probably just going to be more functional. They would probably just be this part, the travel lane, and maybe a sidewalk as needed. But that's kind of the big need for this this zoning district, is to define what Newtown Road would look like from a cross section point of view. Now, the traffic calming is not this section, of course. That's a few sections further, which is not complete right now. But any questions on that? Any comments? Any revisions? Any suggestions?
Hey, Rohit,
Yes.
this is David. I think what you've got here is a great start and good bones. There might be
Hold on, David. I'm sorry, but as I guess as a not committee member, if you wanted to say something, the committee would have to give consensus to.
Okay, sorry about that. Yep,
to what you wanted to say. If you really want to, I can ask the committee to give you to give consensus for you to speak, or you can send me an email if you'd like.
Right on, understand.
Okay, sorry about that, but thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it. Okay, so then we have the residential cross section, which is could be the internal streets, but again, I think this might be need to be tweaked. So I'm gonna kind of briefly discuss how, again, we have the travel lanes, a parking on one side, a front yard, and a porch. It's kind of classic, you know. I don't really think that's gonna keep if you do the Ardrey type of house, but we'll just keep that there. I don't think that's what's gonna end up in the final version, actually. Now that I think about it, but the whole concept of, you know, defining the cross section of the street in the zoning district and the specifics of this cross section on Newtown Road. Does anyone have any questions about that? I don't expect everyone to have, you know, their full formed, you know, opinions and suggestions today. Of course, we're gonna have this, you know, going back and forth for at least a month or two, so, or more. Okay, I mean, the content of this district overall, this zoning district, was largely, you know, a synthesis of all the comments that I've heard from, you know, the planning board, this committee, and the council and residents, the resident survey. So I really hope the content is really what, you know, Marvin in this district strives to be. Finally, not finally, there's street network design. This is also parking not started. Street network design, this is kind of notes in progress. So I won't really talk about that too much, but it's 25 miles an hour and speed humps was noted here. No commercial driveway on Meadowlark and Rising Road. I actually want to change that to no public driveways on Meadowlark or Rising Road. So as not even to have any residential neighborhood driveways. That's something that I realized should change, or that park driveway. But But in general, this is also kind of a work in progress. But did anyone read this and find anything that they wanted to add or subtract from this section? I really like this one. The Parks and Greenways master plan must be fulfilled, not with the exact route, but the end-to-end connections of what is shown on the plan.
We require that of everything that gets
We
built in
do,
Marvin.
right? But this is kind of a
cohesive with that.
right. This is a 1-2 punch. Specifically, so signage is a really interesting section because in the big signage update of 2017, there was a section that referred to village center district signage, and it was adopted at that time. Although I personally wouldn't agree as a planner of adopting an ordinance that refers to a district that didn't exist yet, it is a section of our signage ordinance that exists. So this is it. It's copy and pasted. And it does refer to a lot of other signage sections in our ordinance. So it's really mild though, and there are a lot of pictures in that. So at some point I would want to reorganize the signage section to actually bring in the content from those sections. But basically we have, mild monument signs, awning signs. The colors are regulated. Many of the types of signs have to go through the design review board. And it's very strict. And the illumination is also pretty strict. But I think that's something that I would like to see just in the final version, just kind of consolidated, where all of the material is here instead of it referring to a lot of other sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everything says refer to this section.
Yeah.
There's no detail.
Yeah, so I'm going to come back to that one in the final version, but the lighting is also really good. This was drawn from something that Tom did in another town, which was what was called the Dark Skies Ordinance. This prohibits light pollution by requiring all lighting to be downward facing and not surpassing the property lines. Landscaping shields the view. Neon and fluorescent light tubes in any form are prohibited. Illuminated lights are prohibited. Photometric plans would be required to verify that light is not trespassing onto someone else's property. Light posts themselves would have a dark finish, dark gray, dark brown, dark green, or black, and shall not exceed 15 feet in height. So that gives you like small town kind of pedestrian feeling, and also a rural, like, not having light pollution kind of feeling there.
There's one thing that and this is just, I don't know, maybe I'm just being funny, but it prohibits all string lights and animated lights and stuff like that. But my only comment to that is, does that include holiday decorations?
Right.
Is there a provision for such as Christmas lights, where people put out string lights and different things? I wouldn't want to prohibit our residential looking district to not be able to look residential during holiday decorating times. I would think that would be something we'd want.
Sure, that's a comment made by our councilman Wardman, our council liaison. Could I get a consensus to make those kinds of changes, like to remove string lights and add holiday lighting?
I mean, you could just leave it like that, but exempt holiday decorating lighting.
Yeah. Well,
nothing permanent.
Actually, I mean, I've seen string lights that kind of crisscross across a
yeah,
plaza
really,
space,
plaza
and they look
space
really nice.
They look nice, yeah.
So, is there any objection? Let's say it that way. Is there any objection to making that change?
No.
No,
Okay, great. Well, then I will make that change. And then finally, we have historic preservation. This is the last section, I believe, that I've completed for this, but so much of the importance of this district is to preserve the existing buildings. And so this is a section that describes how all buildings that front Newtown Road shall be preserved and rehabilitated, and all other buildings, like the ones kind of not fronting Newtown Road, are urged to be retained, if possible. And that's something that I added here because there are some buildings that are further back that, you know, I'm talking like accessory structures and one older house that may not really, you know, fit the need for this district. But I'm willing to hear comments on anything in this section. A lot of this was grabbed from another town that did historic preservation, and it basically goes to say that, you know, the existing buildings have to say, and any alterations have to respect the character of the existing building in terms of some of the geometry and the architecture features.
A quick comment on that. There are a couple of buildings, you know, to the extent that I can look around when I drive through Newtown. You know, I've seen a couple of fairly dilapidated buildings, and I don't know if they can be restored to a functional condition. You know, there may be issues like black mold or things like that, just, you know, rendering them kind of borderline uninhabitable or, you know, unusable for any type of kind of commercial purpose. Is there a plan to maybe do a cost benefit analysis? And yeah, that's kind of one of them.
Yeah.
I don't know the condition of it. It just looks pretty like sagging, and I'm not sure how safe it is.
Right.
So.
Well, the owners of that building seem to think that it can be rehabilitated. I've talked to them about it. I think this is kind of maybe unintuitive. Any historic preservationist would tell you that any building can be rehabilitated if you remove the parts that, you know, aren't functional. There are a lot of good framework of buildings that were built, you know, pre-war, and it could definitely be saved. This building here too. Even I think the oldest building in this district is probably going to be Scott Lett's house. It was built in 1847, and he lives in it currently. So,
Where is that?
it's at the corner of Meadowlark and Newtown Road. I'm kind of trying to zoom into it on this satellite, this inset here. So the corner of Marvin, this corner here, this house here.
It's hard to see from the road.
It's hard to see from the road, but it's white. You can see it if you're looking for it.
Can you see it from the entrance to the
See
driveway?
it from Meadowlark's road entrance.
Well, and right now, when you'll drive by it, you'll know Dorota because Beverly's daffodils are all blooming along Newtown Road.
Yeah, so his driveway comes out. This is Marvin Road, you know, you're approaching southbound. His driveway's right off of Meadowlark, and that's his driveway, and that's his house. And the house was built in 1847, and it's plenty good because he and his wife, you know, Scott and Beverly live in it right now. So that's
sure.
Yeah. So and in 1847,
there's obviously ancient buildings that people still use, but
Right.
What I'm saying is, you know, and we kind of focused in on that one little house, but if something isn't structurally safe, would it be an option to basically replace it with something that, you know,
Right.
it's cheaper to just build something that resembles it, and there is no, you know, landmarks or something like that, you know, protection on it. Is that an option? I'm just looking at the money and what we would have to spend to rehabilitate, and who would have to spend it, I don't know.
It can be an option here.
Projecting to this was my property. I've talked to he's stepped before the consultant now, but Walter Field was a Charlotte planner for many years, and I talked to him about the fact of making this property I've got on Newtown Road ADA compliant.
Mm-hmm.
And he did say that commercially, it would, to make it all compliant, would be a very, very expensive process. I'm just throwing that out. And that's something that's very concerning to me, for sure.
So would there be any objection if I added, if a building is too dilapidated to restore, then it may be rebuilt in the same character of the original building, something like that? Right there.
I would say that if the cost of having to upfit it in order to meet the requirements of the commercial code would equal or surpass the amount it would be to tear it down and rebuild, yes.
Rebuild to character.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. I'm okay with that. But I will say in my case, from the comments from John, that I guess it could be built to character in a better way than it is existing.
And how would you define better? That's the complicated part, I guess.
But John was mentioning about having a more, I guess, Victorian style homes and things like that. I mean, being conducive to your, I guess, architectural requirements. I don't know how this could be done that way exactly, but apparently the bricked up structure of my property doesn't seem to be in, some kind of agreement with what he thinks is what needs to be in the landscape, architectural landscape of Marvin. So I would think that it could be better in those respects.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna leave same here, and kind of, I'm gonna put or better, but I don't know if different is better. That's one thing I would kind of push back against.
I would like to steer away from the vernacular at all costs. So,
Yeah.
If better means vernacular, then that's not.
The Marvin vernacular suburban kind of,
No.
you mean? Yeah.
And Dorota, that's fine. There can be a brick, 1.5 story house put back there. And just like it is now. It's gonna look like a new brick, 1.5 story bungalow. You can come up with something that can be, something, whatever is acceptable in regards to better, I'm all open to that.
Okay, I think same character is vague enough that you can propose things that you would consider better and it would still fall under, the acceptability of this sentence. So I think I would leave it at that. But it's a really good comment in general, because we don't really want to force people to do something that would be not the most efficient thing to do. If something can be done that would still preserve the heritage. In any case, this is the historic preservation section in whole. Are there any other comments about it? Okay. So these tree preservation section is also something that I think I'm going to borrow largely from our existing tree ordinance. But like I said, I didn't want to start a section that I didn't think I could finish in time for this meeting. So got out all the big chunks, and this is the last kind of big chunk section of this. How am I gonna?
You might have to go one page at a time, right?
No, I don't want to do
click
that.
view then.
Hold on. First of all, let me make this portrait again. Oh, it is portrait. I think I
You've
just made
got
that.
track changes
Okay.
on.
So view, side to side. Whoa, cool. Okay, all right. Now zoom in slightly. This is still a little too zoomed out. Come on.
I don't think you're getting any further there.
Okay, no, I can turn off track changes. Yeah, that's a little better. No, sides. Okay, all right. That's as best as I think I'm gonna get it. But in any case, you all have the packets with you, so the table or matrix or whatever you want to call it of allowable uses is the last kind of like big ticket item in this code, where here's the list of, you know, when I produced to you guys that really big list that you whittled down, and then the planning board added a couple of additional uses to it. That's this list. And then I went ahead and kind of used my, you know, best guess at what uses I think would be acceptable to be permitted with just a zoning permit, and then what uses would be considered if the applicant sought a special use permit, which would have to go through the planning board and the council. So I figured some of the more tame uses, like medical, professional, art gallery, therapeutic, these are kind of quiet, you know, low to medium traffic kind of uses. And then we have uses like the farmer's market and the pharmacy and the post office. I know you guys specifically said you didn't want the post office, but then the planning board said, what if you had that kind of post office that was like inside the pharmacy, like the Walker's drugstore? And, you know, they wanted to add that one back in. So that's where that came from.
Would that be like a Marvin, North Carolina post office?
I suppose that's what that would be then, if we had an actual USPS. But if it was like a UPS or a FedEx, then it would just be a post office.
It'd be, well, yeah, it would have to warrant it from the postal service to put a post office in Marvin, but like a UPS or FedEx drop site or UPS store or something like that would be something different.
Oh, well then that should have said, that should be post office in pharmacy. Got that
I think
backwards.
the idea was more from, if I remember correctly from the planning board meeting, it was more about having a place where you could drop as opposed to it being like a full functioning post office, right? Like, so there's less trucks coming and going, right? Like, we don't want this to turn into like the post office that's like in Waxhaw.
Right. Of course.
So, even something if it was like smaller, like, I think we had even discussed Mineral Springs maybe being even a little too big. Right, because that one had a bunch of PO boxes and that sort of thing, right? Because they don't have, they don't like use all their street addresses.
Yeah, there were. You were talking about like Walker's drugstore in the Fountains being the kind of the most you'd be considering
you
for
could,
this
like,
kind
drop
of
off
use.
a package, kind of.
Right.
Yeah. And specifically
I'm
not
wondering
UPS.
if that includes a UPS store or a Postnet?
No.
Yeah, I think that would not be. So then we would probably say drop off only.
So basically just a mailbox.
They'd wait it for you.
There might be
Buy some holiday
there might be a clerk.
Okay.
But like just like a small kind of window. There's one also in this little like gas station here. In this gas station, I don't know if you've been in that one. That's not a good picture.
Contract
Let's
postal
go.
unit is what it's called.
Contract postal unit. Yes, that is.
There you go.
There we go.
That'll make it very specific.
That
great.
postal location is horrible. I would
It is.
not use
It is.
that
Or it is.
example.
It is. It is kind of. It is a little sketchy. Let's look at this one instead. I shouldn't even brought it up. This guy over here. So in this little Walker's drugstore, which is maybe 1,500 square feet total, including the post office, there is a little drop-off area with some, boxes that are kind of on a counter, and then there's a clerk there that you can, talk to, and who'll take your stuff. Closes at 4:30. It's pretty mild. Let's see if there are any other pictures.
There's no room there for like trucks or anything, so it can't be too major.
Right. There's not even a loading
The
dock
only
or
trucks
anything.
that there are is like a van type UFBS truck that comes and goes.
Mhm.
I've seen them. I've been there when I've dropped off some mail before, and it's very minimal as far
Yeah.
as trucks.
But even then, I put that as special use. And like I said, I've used kind of some discretion to decide what I think might be acceptable as permitted and what might warrant a special use. And like I said in the early part of the conversation, I also think that it'd be good to add these two as a special use for the existing building only node in case, oops, anything with a blank wouldn't even be considered, right? So it's kind of, I guess, fair enough to say that those should be considerable with a special use permit. That's the
Go
only,
ahead. So
yes.
you're saying that no permit is or is no special use is required to have a real estate office at my location. Is that correct?
That'd be correct. It would fall under the
Okay,
professional
thank you.
services.
Ruby,
Yes.
and shouldn't we, with COVID and everything on the restaurant, have takeout along with dine-in?
Well, if you're opening next week, that might apply, but I don't know how much longer we're gonna be dealing with this kind of situation, but I guess it
We're
would
going
be-
back to normal, currently planned in North Carolina, June 1st.
Right. I think, all dine-in restaurants do takeout, but I think the idea, I did put takeout only as one of the options
And that
in
was-
the original survey, and that did not get a majority of votes. So that's why it's not on this list.
I think that the most we would probably want as far as traffic coming and going would be like your DoorDash to a regular restaurant.
Right.
For their takeout, rather than a
Right.
specific takeout window or something like Chili's has on the side where you got a
Mhm.
takeout window or whatever. Because I think that would create too much come and go traffic.
Right. In any case, it seems that there's a strong push towards not allowing any drive-through uses in this district anyway. So, so that would, in two ways, kind of go against having a takeout-only kind of restaurant.
It's pretty much the same kind of concept, I think.
Right. Whether you walk in or you drive up to a window, it's just a lot of driving back to and from, and not a lot of community opportunity.
Not to mention pollution and harm to everybody's health.
Sorry, what was that?
Not to mention pollution that
pollution,
drive-throughs
yes.
create in many locations in the US. They're being banned for a perfectly good reason. So I don't think we should be starting out with something that's going to be going the way of cigarettes sometime soon.
Fair enough. I mean, that's what we're doing here by not allowing drive-through uses.
Yep.
Yep. So is there anything in this table that anyone would like to see, changed in terms of, something that you don't want to have a P that you think should be an S, or a S that you think should be a P, or, a blank that should not be a blank or something that should be a blank, you know. And if you're looking at this table and you know you don't have your opinions formed yet, you know, again, don't worry. This is not the last time that you're gonna be able to voice your opinion.
For clarification, the specialty food market, we were thinking kind of like the 7th Street market sort of situation, right? With like vendors, I mean, not vendors, but like where they have
Like specific,
a cheese
yeah.
monger and then next to, I don't know,
Yeah, that was
a wine plate that's next, I mean, I don't know if it's gonna have food, right? But then next to whatever else, right? That was
Right.
the idea, kind of, not
Right,
like a
like a-
food court, but like,
like a specific type of food vendor.
yes, okay. Whereas the specialty grocery store might be like Reed's.
Right, exactly.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, prohibited uses is something that is required in North Carolina. We're gonna probably copy and paste with some minor modifications the prohibited uses from Marvin Gardens, but you know those would be, you know, your adult stores, your tattoo parlors, sale of cigarettes and lottery tickets, you know, etc. That's going to be a pretty straightforward section once we get that together. And the rest of it's not written yet. Again, public space standards, I really wanted to have that all fleshed out before I propose, you know, first look at it. And the rest of it is just, you know, the administration, how it gets written, you know, how it gets through the process, you know. It'd probably be something similar to a major subdivision where there's a sketch plan with a public input phase, a construction plan, and final plat, where each of those 3 phases would have to go through the planning board and the council, and the first phase would actually have to go through the Parks and Greenway board as well. So, I mean, there's, even after this zoning district is adopted in some form, there's still going to be like at least a half a dozen opportunities for the actual site plan that gets proposed to be vetted. Right? And another thing I just realized, there might be some sort of historic district board. Not this board specifically, but a lot of towns with blossoming downtowns have what's called a Main Street board, which is just another like group of people that kind of, not only do they see the ins and outs of the development, but they also kind of manage the revenue that's coming from the tax district, of course with council's input, but that would be a step in this process, most probably. That's all I got for now. I mean, those are the, you know, so many of the big ticket items are complete, and I didn't want to, you know, wait till the whole thing was complete to show you at least parts of it. But it seems like there wasn't that much blatant opposition to anything that was proposed in this packet. I'm really pleased to see that. And
Can I mention one thing? Rick?
Yes.
I think there's a lot of work into this. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
The Red Barn, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but anyway, from a farm background, there were a number of Marvin, surrounding parts, Union County, always known for cotton fields. But as cotton didn't create as much income for a lot of farmers, they put in dairies, especially after World War II. My folks did there. There's still some old dairy barns around. That red barn looks, it reminds me, I went to a wedding reception or something in the Springs Dairy Barn. It still has the milk stalls in it. I don't know if it's still, I guess it's still standing. But you could give a nod, instead of just everything in the Marvin area, in this part of Union County, giving a nod to cotton. There was a lot of milk produced in this area, so, but there's mainly small dairy farms.
I think that's interesting, Tim, because also Billy Graham's family up in, South, further up South Boulevard, they had they were dairy farmers.
Oh, yeah.
It's really interesting too.
They're family friends of my parents, grandparents.
Yes.
But, there's.
And they also had those, I think his brother lived down this part. Not mistaken.
Melvin milked the cows. He milked the cows for, the Graham family. He was the farmer, and his farm and part of the Ray property is where Longview is now. So,
and Mel Jr. did Longview, and then he owned the property that's off of Bray Road down close to Providence. It's now Highclere subdivision.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm mistaken.
Yes. Farm down there. So there were a lot of dairy farms in the area. Still got some old, there's a couple still standing around. So that one reminded me of it, and a lot of farmers make income from dairy farms. You could do something nice at the gourmet grocery store, like a Reed's or something. Get something maybe like that bread barn. They didn't. They kind of cheated on the hayloft. That's a big milk barn in that picture to have a small hayloft with it. So it's really not trouble. It was made not to be a dairy barn, but anyway. Now this of course is a dairy barn. So I don't know. There were a lot of dairy farms around the Marvin area when I was growing up.
I've actually got some old milk bottles from Monroe, dairy farms that were back in,
I've got several all over Mecklenburg County and stuff. Bradley Reed and the Reed Dairy Road.
Yes.
They have a big dairy. Bradley, I knew Bradley. And Mr. Yarborough milked cows over on Crane Road. Clyde lives there now, but still got the milk barn there. So I don't know. There are a lot of dairies in there.
I agree with you on that.
And one other thing I was just going to ask Rohit, have you heard how much money Marvin's going to get in this American Rescue Plan?
Yes, I have. It's somewhere around 1.8, 1.9 million.
There's going to be strings attached to that heavily.
I heard 1.9 million from, they just announced it. I think Union County's getting, 45 million?
I haven't heard.
I think that's the number. It's, anyway, it's a lot of money. I don't know what all the strings are. Can any of that be used for what you're talking about? Union County's 46.5. So Marvin's getting almost 2 million of it.
Right, and I'm not sure.
We don't know yet. We're still waiting for guidance.
Right, Christina's gonna prepare a report for us, and I'm pretty sure council's resolved to spend that on things that are directly related to, COVID-related, benefits for Marvin residents. What that looks like is not really known at all right now, but that's also kind of off topic.
Okay.
I
just thought you won't find some bridge money.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it for now. I mean, anything, if there's anything else that anyone wants to, mention before I, wrap this up and say let's move on to the next item. Thanks. Also, just extend that good job to Tom, our consultant from InFocus, and also Emma, who's been helping us along on the back end for since the beginning of this committee. So, it's looking. I think it's looking great, and I'm glad there's not really anything blowing up about it. So, with that, yes, we can move on to the next item. Let me make sure this gets saved.
Can we go ahead and start?
Yeah.
Okay. So briefly, this is the thing I wanted to talk to y'all about. Post-pandemic meetings. The only reason that we are meeting virtually is because the governor issued a state of emergency allowing us to meet virtually. Once that is repealed, we will all be required to be here physically. And that could be as soon as June 1st. So I'm telling you this now because theoretically our next meeting could be here physically all together. So just keep that in mind. We'll keep you guys updated if that happens. But as of now, act as if we're going to keep meeting virtually. But if that changes, you'll get an email from me about it. Village Hall's not that big, but we'll figure out how to accommodate everyone, and you can park at Village Hall or at the church. So I'll leave it at that.
We just have to meet over here.
Yeah,
This big of a committee.
right. I mean, like literally, where are we gonna fit 11 people?
Oh,
Yeah, the good thing is this is probably 3-4 more months of this.
we fit around 9 around the conference table, but
Yeah. Let's plan
Yeah.
on, if we're gonna have to meet in person, let's meet here.
Yeah, makes sense.
well, might have to come back and amend that meeting schedule then because it has
Oh.
places on it. We'll tackle that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
We'll tackle that when we get to it. Yeah. We can recess a meeting and then change it, so not a big deal.
Yeah. We did today, and it knocked off like 4 minutes. Should be fine.
Okay, that's all I got. So
Any comments on that? Anyone? Okay.
next is action items, and I don't have anything.
I don't really have anything either, other than, just to make those comments, finish out the other in progress sections, which would be finished by, a lot more of it will be done by the planning board meeting, and then hopefully all of it will be done by the next committee meeting.
I'm not going to count that.
Don't. Then. Okay. Well, then it's up for committee comments. I'll start with Melinda.
No comments, great, well, no, I do have one, great work. I know that this was not an easy task to take some other stuff and turn it into this, and one of the things I was gonna say earlier is that while I'm not sure, I love the idea of Marvin developing, I think that what you've come up with is, I know that there's been some worries that, right, we need to be partners in this, and I think that this lays the groundwork for a partnership that, between any developers and the landowners, as well as the residents, concerned residents, including myself, that this is palatable. This is really well done. So,
Thank you.
yeah, good job.
Thank you. Will? Comments?
I want to say both you and Austin doing a great job, and I'm very pleased with the process and keep it going. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorota, any comments?
And now just echo everybody's admiration of your work, and thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
I just appreciate what y'all are doing. Anyway, it's good. We've got some things to think about and work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake?
No comments, thanks everyone.
Thank you. John?
I just sort of repeat what I said before. Originally I wasn't real sure about form-based code, and you started warming me up at our last planning board meeting, and you have done a tremendous amount of work since that meeting. I know it's a long way from being finished, but congratulations, and I'm as I said, starting to put my arms around it now.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that, this way of describing the district would not only be, easily visualized, but also, a lot of the content is, like I said, comprised of the discussions that were had in this committee and the planning board, etc. So, I hope that, you know, the end product is the best for Marvin. And in this way, it will, I think it will be. So with that,
Andy?
oh yes, Andy.
No, I just, you know, I echo everybody's comments. You've done a tremendous amount of work, and I'm pleased with all of what you've put in. And so far, I like a lot of the aspects of it. I like the comments that have been brought up by those on the board that have brought forth some comments. And I'm excited to see the rest of it.
Great. Thanks. And then so with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:45 p.m.
So moved.
A motion.
Okay, great.
Melinda beat you to
Melinda
it.
got the motion. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay, got him. Thank you. Wonderful. Thanks everyone again for coming, and thank you for your time. Hope you have a great night. See you in a month or half a month if you're on the planning board.